Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture. This episode is brought to you by Chan, which is one of the one and only phenomenal and personalized anime DVD / Blu-ray subscription services, which they basically utilize a very quick survey that determines what anime you like, and with that information, they fill a box full of anime and other anime products. That could be figures, games, manga, and more. The box also has some seriously sick art on it, and it's once every 3 months that you can pick it up. So check them out. It's at boxuchan.com. Subscribe. They're supporting this show and they're making a lot of stuff happen for me. And without further ado, I have Mindy Wheeler, who is back for round two. We did an interview 4 years ago, and Mindy is a comic creator, an artist, and has just recently launched Indie Crowdfund, which we're going to get into. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I know 4 years was pretty cool.
Yeah, 4 years. A lot's happened in 4 years. And we went into some of this stuff and some stuff that surrounded your background. And I don't want to rehash all of that in the first interview and who you've worked for and what you worked on. But a lot's happened in the 4 years. And you took a little bit of a hiatus for a little bit, and now you've just come back. And I kind of want to talk about, now that you've come back, what you've been up to. And one of the books that I want to talk about that's kind of cool is this book with Dynamite around Vampirella, because it's 50 years of Vampirella. Vampirella is a very cool character. It's one of the first characters that was actually cosplayed back in the day at San Diego Comic Con. And so, how did all of this come about with you getting to do a cover for Dynamite on such an iconic character and having three versions of that character? And it was sort of crowdfunded, which is kind of cool also when we think about it.
Well, I asked them if I could. That's pretty much how it came about. You're right. I took a big hiatus from comics, and then I got back in. It was either February or March around that time that I got back, and I started up my social media accounts all over again. The only thing I didn't nuke was my Facebook art page, but I'd given it to somebody else. So I did all that, got back on social media, found a bunch of old fans and friends and stuff. So I've actually had a pretty good time, since then. It's been pretty positive for the most part, reconnecting with people. And then I saw Vampirella's 50th anniversary and some covers coming out. And I just decided, what the heck? So I contacted Dynamite and said, hey, can I do one? And they were cool, but COVID was just starting. So the lockdowns were just starting. So we had to wait about 2 months after they said yes for the printers to open back up before we could go ahead and do that. So I had 2 months of sitting on a piece, just polishing it up and making it pretty and ready. And then, we announced it. And because of everything with COVID, they're doing the crowdfunding. And actually, a lot of publishers are. I think Dark Horse is too.
Boom. Boom is doing some
Zenescope
stuff.
is doing it now. Yeah, everybody's doing this crowdfunding stuff. So they used Indiegogo, and that's what we did. And they hosted the campaign for me, and I think we cracked 8,000 and something dollars. I forget the exact amount, but it was successful. It was good.
Yeah, it's very cool. I actually know the actual number. It's 1,677%. The campaign was funded to the
Oh,
T, to the T.
oh
So
yeah.
that's something that's very cool. And one of the things about Dynamite, and we were speaking before we went on the air, talking about the comic industry. I'm gonna let everybody in on a little bit of insight where clearly indie and more indie publishers are now starting to take market share from Marvel and DC. And so, and Dynamite has reached out to people like Keith Garvey, Sun Kumanaki, Elias Chazus, and those names are known. And there's several others that we could just keep going down the list here that people know. So, what is it like to be part of a company that's starting to take market share and be with those names that are killing it right now? And in many ways, I mean, Chazus has been around forever, but Sun Kumanaki and Keith Garvey are very much the new kids on the block, and especially in this area of the comic world. So, what is that like for Dynamite to sort of trust you and getting to be in league with them and have this almost as your return? Because it's kind of a really cool return, and it's a nice way how to kick that off.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was pretty excited about it, and honored that they gave me that opportunity. And it was, based on my art. They'd taken a look at my art and seen my capabilities, and that's what had them say yes. So to me, that was a big compliment that, they thought I was capable of doing a variant, and for the 50th anniversary being one of those. So, I mean, it was all around a pretty good experience. They were really easy to work with. They were super nice. I just talked to them yesterday because actually I have one I could show you.
Even better, even better.
I got my comps in and I signed the books and sent them out to Dynamite. So they're on their way to New Jersey right now to get sent back out to everybody else who got a signed copy. So, or CGC if they got them CGC. So it's kind of the final step. Then I'm getting some lithographs in the mail, and I'll be signing those and sending that out. And then it's a thing of the past. So, I mean, it's been a really fun ride. And one thing I did different was a Vampirella drawing contest. So I approached them with that. I said, I really want to give back to the fans that make this possible for me, and make this kind of a big hoo-ha of a thing. So I threw a drawing contest and we got like 35 submissions, and I went over all of them on my YouTube channel and gave some critique. It was wonderful to see everybody pitch in. There were so many people I met just through that. And then I'll show you my contest winner. Dynamite picked the number one, Terry Parr on Instagram, Darth Terry, I think, on Instagram. And that was the reward that they got, their back cover of my Vampirella. So it's been really fun, and I think it definitely took my career to a different level now, especially being that I was on hiatus for a while and it just kind of disappeared. So I got a lot of new eyes on me.
And to talk even more about this, because I did mention it was 1,677% funded. There's 3 different variants. And this thing, I think, was funded fully or met its goal in 3 hours, which is kind of cool. And so it was very quick, and people obviously really wanted this. They either knew who you were and were waiting for you to come back, or they just saw the art and they're like, I'm not too sure who the artist is, but this is amazing, which is equally as flattering in many ways. Both of them are fantastic. So what is that like for you to have something funded so quickly? And I don't know if you were watching it or you were launched it or they launched it, and then you're like, oh snap, like a day later it got funded.
It was nerve-wracking to do it because it was my first crowdfunding campaign. So I didn't know what to expect, especially being gone. I wasn't sure how much it would be funded or how little it would be funded, but I was pleasantly surprised. So, I mean, I was there watching it launch on my phone and like looking at the hours, and it worked. So, yeah, I mean, thanks to Dynamite too. They helped push it out, and I think it just really got me reconnected to a bunch of people. I met a lot of really cool people in the Vampirella fan group on Facebook. So, I mean, yeah, I guess that if that answers your question, I was just really
So
nervous, but then
even
it
to
worked.
talk more about crowdfunding, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it towards the back end with what you've launched, which is the indie crowdfund and all that. But given that you were gone for 4 years, because we go back 2015, 2016, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and the entire sector of crowdfunding, I don't want to say it was shady, but it wasn't as professional as it is today. And
Sure.
so, what was that like coming back? And I don't know how close you were watching it or anything like that, but as somebody who's a fan and as somebody who in the last 6 months I've been exposed to it a lot more and I've learned all the little intricacies about it, it's in a whole different ball game. And the way
Yeah.
people are doing it and the way people are treating it is so different. Even in the last year, it's evolved so rapidly. So, what it was that like for you to come back from something that, for lack of a better word, was less professional and now is ultra professional. For the most part, there are still some bad apples in this
Yeah.
sector, and there's always going to be, just like every other sector. But now, when people launch Kickstarters or they launch Indiegogos or they're going to launch on your platform, it's professionally done for the most part. So, what was that entire thing like to come back into?
Well, when we talked, I think we talked in 2000 and was it 15 or 16?
16.
16. Okay. And then I was pregnant and we closed our shop in the beginning of 17, I want to say. Um, and around that time, I mean, I didn't know really much about Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I didn't know Indiegogo existed for sure. I knew about Kickstarter, but it was a totally different animal then. And I remember we were talking about holding a contest of for artists who had Kickstarters and giving them like free tables at our show that we were planning. So I always recognize it as a place where maybe indie guys would go, right, and kickstart their book, but it was definitely a much, much smaller thing. And I remember, well, I left comics around the end of summer of 2017. We closed our shop and I was really pregnant and I was really sick, which is really the reason why we closed. I was just like, I was done with the stress. It was a really stressful job. And I had already had one miscarriage while running the shop, a little tidbit that I don't tell a lot of people. And so being pregnant again, I didn't want anything to happen. So it's time for me to bounce and take care of myself for a little while. So I did do that. We had our baby, and then I kind of stumbled across comics again uh, in the fall of 2018, and it was because of a lot of the Indiegogo Kickstarter traffic. I just kind of ran into it because I had spent that whole time taking care of a little baby, wasn't really on Facebook, just kind of said bye and didn't draw very much either. So then I started seeing all these really successful campaigns, and it tuned me into it. I thought that maybe the industry was changing quite a bit, and I think it was. And I'd already seen a lot of changes already as I was leaving. There were even issues I had with the industry that I wasn't a big fan of. There a lot of changes. So it definitely caught my attention. And I had announced that I thought it was time to come back into comics again and release my own book that I had been planning for a long time. There's a book I've been working on for a long time. But anyways, it's been in kind of the shadows. And it was until then. And that's when I started talking to people and I said, okay, I think I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to release my book now. But then I saw a lot of just negativity in the industry surrounding that stuff. And it was pretty much everywhere. It's been a really difficult 4 years for people to get along. It's been a lot of politics and division.
Yeah,
And I left.
even
I
talk
left
further
again. I
about
wasn't
that.
there for long, just a couple weeks, and then again I left. I'm a truck driver, so I've been over the road. Haven't had much time for social media, but with COVID shutting down and stuff, it was time to come home and take care of business. And the thing is, I really love comics and art. And so even while I was away from working in the industry, I still really missed it. It's something that I spent a lot of time. I started in, I think 2014 was when I first started getting gigs and things like that. And I didn't want to give it up. So I decided to just come back and screw everything else. And now here I am. So the Vampirella was a really big deal. You're right about that. So
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about some of the back history. We're not going to go into all of it, but just to give people an idea here, obviously, for those who've been living under a rock, Donald Trump got elected president in 2016 or took office in 2016. And a lot of stuff in entertainment has been rough across the board. It's not just comics. A lot of people have disagreements and they think the other side is the enemy, and it's both left and right. I know a lot of people who have certain viewpoints and they're quiet. I'm not going to name whom. And obviously, Comicsgate happened. There's been internet trolls, and a lot of people have been on both sides of the aisle. There have been, people on the left and who are liberal who have been trolled by people on the right, and there have been people on the right who have been trolled and attacked due to that as well. I have been attacked by certain people. I got no problem mentioning Dan Slott's name, who has blocked me because he publicly disagrees with me, and I legitimately have 500 Twitter followers. So please don't go harass Dan Slott. It's just not the Peter Parker thing to do. But anyhow, that should give everybody an idea of what's going on with everything out there. So let's fast forward to 2020, and I'm just curious before we talk about some of your other work, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you think the environment has gotten better, with that, or do you think that maybe it's not as bad because, and then I'll state my opinion first. I think there's 5% of people on the right who are in the extreme in the comic world, and there's about 5% of people on the left who are. And I think the majority of people tolerate each other for the most part. But I don't know how you feel about that. And also, I'm in the center of it all, where I legitly see everything, and I stand in the center with one foot on both sides. And so, obviously, I don't have a side. I also haven't been put on blast the same way. And maybe if I ever am, and I'll publicly say it, that I'll be swayed to one side versus the other.
Well, I think it depends on what side of the fence you stand on, what it looks like. But I mean, for anyone watching, I'm a libertarian conservative. I grew up a Democrat in a very, very Democratic family. And I just turned conservative of my own volition when I was about 19 or 20. Um, I I've seen both sides. I've believed both sides. I voted for Obama, um, and then I voted for Trump. So I mean, I as far as your answer to your question, it was horrible in 2016.
Yeah,
There was
yeah.
so much bias against conservative values. I mean, there's just no way to sugarcoat. I don't think, at least the circle that I was surrounded by didn't like what I had to say, my personal beliefs. There was a
So let me ask you a question, and I don't mean to interrupt. So they didn't like your personal beliefs, and obviously
right.
you were a new artist. And the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because it's not attacking your art. There's a clear difference between attacking somebody who's a bad writer because they wrote something bad versus saying, because that's not a personal attack. That is a professional attack. And so that's what we're really talking about right now. We're not talking about, oh, is your art good enough? Is your writing good enough? It's this idea that what happened in 2016, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there was a lot of personal attacks on people.
There were a lot of personal attacks, but the thing is, it conflicted with my opportunity to get the art. So that's where it
Yeah.
becomes a big problem. If you've seen the movie Hacked on Netflix, it's really good. That helped explain my life in 2016 because at the time I didn't really understand um, the hate that was going on, and I don't think it's like because I swing more right, it's totally all the left. There's people that I know that are left that I get along with just fine. It's like the radicals that come and attack, and they really attacked me in a way that I couldn't get a job anymore doing art. So at that point, it doesn't really matter if or not my art is good. It's just that I fell in a circle of people who were scared or felt pressured by the court of public opinion to not support me.
Right.
And I think that was really coming from people who were more radical. And that was just like the climate of the time. I'm not the only one that it happened to,
And
by all
so
means,
and so
not.
fast forward 2020, where in 2020, and I'm speaking more from 2020 because I'm more in the sector now in 2020. Obviously, I'm not a writer, I'm not an artist. I am a spectator, and I speak to a lot of people on both sides. So, do you think that this has gotten better in 2020, or do you think it's gotten worse? Because the way I feel, and
Yeah.
again, I'm coming in at it from I'm in the center and dead in the center. I don't pretend I see both sides, and I have values on both sides of the aisle publicly for everybody who wants to know that about my life. So, and I have friends who tolerate certain values of mine, and I tolerate their values. And I know a lot of people in the comic industry, and a bunch of the people that tend to be more left are somewhat fans of yours as well. So, and I think you know certain people. I can mention Chuck Pino. He knows your work, and he thinks you're nice and all that stuff. And then I love Chuck, and he's rational, and he's great. And I think he's very tolerable for a lot of things. So, and if Chuck, I'm wrong, please strike me down with lightning. Um, but how do you feel about that? Because fast forward 4 years, what
Fast
you
forward to 2020. I think it's I think there's more support for conservatives in the arts because people were it's hard to explain what it's like now without going through the story, but
so
a
I'll take
lot
a
of things.
stab. I'll take a stab at it. I
Huh,
think that after 3.5 years of Trump, I think that certain people have come to accept it. I also think that certain conservatives, who are scared, are also now more publicly out there. I also think there are certain people like Ethan Van Schreiber and Chuck Dixon has been a public conservative, and Ethan has done very well on Indiegogo. You know, he raised $1 million, and I think that also helps to give a leg to say, oh wait, maybe there's some validity to their work, and maybe I can look past their value on A, B, C, and D. I also think that COVID to some degree has also helped because I think COVID has reminded that, oh, wait a second, this disease doesn't discriminate and it could take anybody from anybody. And if you're a conservative and you lost somebody from COVID, and then there's a Democrat who lost somebody from COVID, it's very relatable, and that's another connection. It's not a pleasant connection, and obviously, I don't wish anybody to lose anybody, but when that happens, I think that's also helped a lot, this disease, to sort of say, hey, we're all human still. And I think people are interconnecting with their humanity in a variety of ways as well. And I don't know if I think I'm hitting it partially on the hammer, and I don't want to hash up all the stuff that happened because there's other podcasts that you have been on that have gone through that. And
yeah.
you,
Well, I'll say this. The point that you made just a minute ago that they were my personal beliefs and not my art, right? Remember saying that?
Mhm.
That's what was so confusing for me because I felt the same way. I said, "Why do you care about my personal beliefs?" Because it was the people that were like my boss or my coworkers in the professional world that had a problem that said it was affecting me professionally. So the worlds mixed, and that to me blew my mind because the worlds shouldn't mix. I should be a person and I should be an artist. You should be able to look at my art without having to like boycott it because we disagree politically. But now I had someone tell me in 2016 that talking about Trump was career suicide. Okay. Fast forward to 2020, I no longer think that talking about Trump is career suicide. If that answers your question in the shortest way possible, it was
Fair
then.
enough.
It was then, but I don't think it is now. But I do think that people are still pretty much just as polarized as they were. It's just that hopefully, we can see some reckoning, like you said. And me, I used to be more charged about it. I used to get more offended or something like that because it was so out of the blue for me to even hear that people cared about my politics, and I found that really strange. But I've done a lot of reading and research and history lessons and things like that since then, catching up, trying to be more humane about it. And my time off from social media helped a lot. I think if anybody's in a rough patch feeling really angry, they should do the same. And I just had a different tone in that I'm pretty tolerant of anybody else. If we disagree, then at least let's do it civilly. And art, I really push that. I like art, I like books, and I want to continue making them, regardless of whether I have anything to say about Trump or not. This time around, I just don't want to let that stop me. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of people like me actually that have been through very similar things.
Yeah, and we're going to leave the controversy There's a lot of stuff going on, and obviously I don't want to push it because, as I stated, I think you've been on one or two other podcasts, or maybe even four or five, and I know at least one of them that you people spoke about this a lot more than we want to, because I think there's better stuff to talk about, and there's more interesting stuff to talk about, and I definitely want to start talking about crowdfunding and that entire sector. And so before
Well,
we
sorry to interrupt you. I will just say to anyone who's watching, Just because I do lean more right doesn't mean I hate any other particular type of person. I'm a very nice person. And that's all. I don't
So,
condemn racism or anything like that, just for the record. But now let's move on.
and I'm just going to reiterate it again, just to get the point across. If you want to know more about this, again, there are other podcasts that have thoroughly gone through this, and I just don't want to rehash that because I like to move forward, talk about different stuff versus saying the same old stuff out there. And I do want to talk about indie crowdfunding and crowdfunding in general. And before we get into what you're doing and the comics that you're publishing with your new project and your new crowdfunding mechanism and site, I am curious how you feel about crowdfunding right now. We spoke about it a little bit, but obviously Keanu Reeves just came into Kickstarter, and I know it's a competitor, but it's kind of a cool thing, and there's a lot
Ah,
of validity to when celebrities are now interested in publishing comic books in general, and they choose to do crowdfunding, and then Bill and Ted 3 just came out, so there's a lot of eyes on crowdfunding, and so I'm
yeah.
just curious how you feel about that because it's a big topic right now in that sector, and you're building out a platform that deals with that sector.
Yeah, that's cool about Keanu Reeves. I like Keanu Reeves.
With Boom Studios.
So the
Boom
platform
Studios.
I'm building, he's cool. The platform I'm building is comic book specific. So it's a little different than Indiegogo and Kickstarter. And it has a functionality built in where you can connect to retailers. And we have right now 31 retailers around the country signed up so they can see their retailer perks, which are
Hey, we're going to talk
optional,
about this. We're
subject
going to
to
talk about
readers.
this. You're just spoiling everything. We're going to talk about it. All my questions are just out the window.
Okay, well, how I feel about crowdfunding.
And him
I
coming
feel
in and
in
celebrities coming in. Please don't ruin the questions. I work very hard on this. This is a professional show.
I already told you I thought Keanu Reeves was cool.
So how do you feel about that now that crowdfunding is, and especially in the comics sector, is getting major verification, and even some of the big guys like Scott Snyder's now coming in, and Jeff Lemire's been in on it, and Todd McFarlane's been on it, and Charles Soule and Ryan Brown. I mean, I just backed the Curse Words book, and I'm stoked for it, and it was actually cheaper than if I was to have to buy it in a store because it was crowdfunded, which is awesome. There's some awesome perks, and Charles Soule singing is the best perk that's ever going to be on it. And you can buy an LP, like an album LP with it, which is dope. It's going to be dope as dope can be. But how do you feel that now that all these people are really coming into it and they're bringing their audiences into the platform and then even into the concept, and they've sold the concept where the concept before a lot of these big guys were coming out, at least in my opinion, was it was being tested and it was almost in beta, and now it's officially proven that it works. And there's a
Yeah.
reason why Scott Snyder's in on it. There's a reason why Ethan Van Schreiber's in on it. There's a reason why Chuck Dixon has done 50 projects in the last 5 years on Kickstarter. Maybe not 50, but close enough to that number. Curse Words, Ryan Brown and Charles Soule. I think Ryan's done 11 projects in the last few years. So what is that? How do you feel as a creator?
Well, I think it's exciting because it gives a lot more interaction with your fan base, I think. At the same time, I mean, I'm a big supporter of local comic shops, so that's kind of what I'm doing with bringing our
Yeah.
platform, bringing retailers back into the fold. But I mean, people are more than welcome to go out and pursue their own success. It's a free country, I think. So, it's
And
great for
that's
those people. It's great, and especially these big names like you said, Snyder and McFarlane and stuff. I think crowdfunding went through its amateur stage, especially like 2 years ago. I remember when I was veering into the world of comics a little bit, I saw a lot of disappointment of not delivering their campaigns and stuff. So, I mean, I couldn't imagine not delivering my book in a timely manner, but that's just me. So I think it's exciting. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and really though, it's about the world just going more digital. It's still important, I think, to keep small businesses alive. So while I think it's very exciting for a lot of people, and the perfect avenue to kickstart their book for like an indie, that's the purpose of crowdfunding is to fund the project to get it off the ground. I'd like to see the next evolution in that, uh, to bring it into the small businesses too. That's
So
what I think of it. Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect avenue to kickstart your book for sure for small indie creators to work
so
outside publishers if they want to.
so a lot of people I speak to and what they do is that what their Kickstarter is for, the books are done, and some of these books have been out digitally and they had an ultra small print run, maybe like 200 prints. And what they're
Mm.
now doing is that they go to Kickstarter to print it officially. And so they have very low goals, and the book's already done. And the whole point of the Kickstarter is to print it and cover the printing costs for people who want a physical copy and to touch it up. And then they are small businesses. And so the perfect person I think of is Sovereign Comics, where Tyrone Jackson runs a small business. And when he goes to Kickstarter, and basically it's meant for anybody who wants to order the book, and then he raises a little bit more money. It helps with the print run, and it actually really helps to keep everything running and get the book into people's hands. And so I'm starting to see that trend being used for indie comics. And I think it's really clever, and I think it's a smart way to do it. It's almost like a pre order form to cover the expenses, and most projects are already done that do it that way. And obviously, a lot of people I speak to right now are doing that as well. I think I would say 95% of the people that I interview in the comic field are doing it that way, which I think is awesome. And I think it's the best way how to do it because it's the most professional way how to do it. Even if this is just a hobby for you and you're a comic person, getting your book 95% done and then launching your Kickstarter is the best way how to do it.
Yeah, I would encourage people to have their books done because it's important to deliver on time to keep that professionalism.
And now we've been teasing it, and let's just talk about it. Let's talk about indie crowdfund. So we're gonna start from the beginning here. So obviously we have Kickstarter, we have Indiegogo, we have Patreon. I guess we have OnlyFans, but I don't know how you do a comic on OnlyFans. I have no idea how you do it. OnlyFans is great for video, everybody. I'm on OnlyFans, and this face is a money face right here, clearly. So but Patreon's been used for comics, Kickstarter's used for comics, Indiegogo's used for comics. Those three can be used for a variety of other things. But what is indie crowdfunding? What does that exactly do? What does it entail? And how does it work? So, because people are hearing about this for the first time, and this is brand new, like 2 weeks at best,
Yeah,
right? Brand new.
yes. Yeah, and we're still in the pre-launch phase. So we're gonna have a big grand
So you're
launch
you're you're, you're on your
soon.
pre-honeymoon.
Yeah, it's like we're yeah, exactly. The pre-launch phase is for people to understand how it works, put up their campaigns, us to work out any kinks, make it any
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
But
So, how does it
yeah,
work? What is it exactly? Because people
okay.
are hearing about this for the first time, for the most part.
It's a crowdfunding platform with additional functionality for retailers to tap in, and it can be used as a storefront, or you can have an active campaign. Meaning, I mean, you could do the traditional crowdfunding things, same as on any other site, or you can just list the books right that are already done for sale. And there are verified retailer profiles of comic shops around the country that have like a almost, how do you say it? They can go into the campaigns and see the retailer perks, which as the creator you choose to set. It's
It,
optional,
yeah.
but I mean it's just if you want to give the retailers like a discount if you're interested in getting your comic shop or comic books on the shelves, then it just allows you to do it. It's like a networking, convenience for people to have all those eyes on their books, and some creators are really excited about getting their books on the shelves. I mean, as great as crowdfunding is, there's also people
It has
who
limits.
um huh
It has its limits. Kickstarter and Indiegogo. One of the biggest complaints, and I think you're solving this, is that there's no way how to store any of your projects. So when somebody sends you a digital file on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, it's not stored in Indiegogo's profile. It's not stored in your Kickstarter's profile. Comixology stores all your stuff in
yeah,
there. I have a bunch of series that I'm reading digitally on Comixology, and it stores all my stuff digitally, and it's fantastic. So at any time I can access it. as long as I log in, and then whether I'm on my iPad or my computer or I steal somebody's iPad for whatever reason I choose to. I plead the fifth, I promise. But this does give that a little bit where it does connect retailers to crowdfunding, and a lot of people are trying to break into indie stores or within the book break in. I have people who legitimately call up indie comics, say, hey, I have a bunch of comics, are you interested? And they might go through a list of 50, and if they get 3, it's a good day. And so
Yeah.
obviously this is solving that problem, because one of the fastest ways how to get a customer now is obviously the internet, but also your local comic shop. I mean, pre-COVID, pre-COVID, and then once we get out of COVID, it's going to be a little bit better. But that's a challenge, and I think this is sort of solving that. So how does that work? Because I think that is ultra fascinating for a lot of people who are interested and are doing a lot of Kickstarter stuff. How does that exactly work with a retailer and that connection? Because I think that's the most interesting part of this.
Well, and yeah, that's the big focus too. I think we're just at a time in comics when retailers are looking for different content, and a lot of them are into indies and think they're very exciting, but they're not into the crowdfunding on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. It's hard when you're running a comic shop. I know, because you're very busy and you don't have time to go back and do all that. Or if you miss it, and then it's like maybe you're ordering a reprint if you go back to order it because it already happened. You're not in the hype. Additionally, the pricing usually isn't there. For a retailer to get any big discount that would make it worth them putting in their shop, because they got to pay the bills too. That's kind of how it works, right? So bringing that into it, I think the retailers are excited to see what's out there and be kind of brought into that fold. And the creators who, I mean, some creators I think would aspire to just crowdfund, and that's fine. But then other creators aspire to be the next big thing on the comic shelves. So this gives them that opportunity. And then some fans who really love their comic shops, their local comic shops, but who have supported crowdfunding books, are excited to see a little bit more of that business go to the retailers so that they can support that shop still. Maybe their favorite shop is there. They've been going it for 10 years, but the shop's about to close, and maybe they could use a boost. So it's just kind of making the whole wheel turn. And I think also a big part of this is that when you run a comic shop, you get a lot of fans in your store that don't do social media. They don't do crowdfunding, they don't have those eyes on your projects. So by just cutting out the retailers, you're missing a large audience you sometimes wouldn't realize that just go in and ask their comic shops, what books are new? What can I buy? And they'd see it on the shelf and they'd pick it up. We're talking about thousands of people that are just not looking at crowdfunding. So even with things going so digital and even with COVID, I think there are still people out there. I've talked to them, recently that just they don't go on social media, but they still
So
want books. So
So even to talk further about that, because I think something even bigger that's happening right now is COVID pushed DC and Marvel behind by about 5 months on average, meaning that for this is the first time probably in 30 years where DC, Marvel, and even Image, they've had to cancel or delay books. And certain things have been pushed off, certain things have been delayed, and so nothing new as an event in the DC and Marvel world is happening right now for the most part. Things are starting to move a little bit, but we look at Punchline. Punchline was supposed to come out, I think, in March. Punchline came out in, I think, June and July, and now the Punchline one shot is coming out, I think, in a few days. And then Spider Man 850 is coming out in 2 weeks. I think that was supposed to happen 3 months ago, from my understanding. And so this is the first time indie comics actually have a leg up on the big guys. And also, this is the first time comic shops were actually saved by COVID because they had to reduce their backlogs tremendously through a variety of means. And they also are starving for new content. And so indie comics, in many ways, because of COVID, I think, is going to be bigger than ever. And I think a lot of comic shops want it. And so I think you're sort of right on the money And I also think a lot of fans are fed up with DC, Marvel, and even Image to some degree, where they're looking for new content. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff out there that's kind of crazy and out there. I mean, I was just reading and I just interviewed Sister Mercy. You got a schizophrenic nun that turns violent. I mean, where do you see that in a DC Comics book or a Marvel book? That's out there and it's wild and it's an amazing book. And it's a fun book to read too. And it's done really well. And if you like that interview, and I'm going to plug it, so that was yesterday's interview for those who want to watch it. But it's this idea that I think that's something that a lot of comic shops. I think this is really a brilliant feature for connecting people, and I hope you go even further with it because I think a lot of retailers want it, and I think we see the reward on Kickstarter, whether it's called a retail reward, and I just think that it's not enough because getting 10 copies of a book, that's great and all, but it's not really too much of a discount. And how do you pass that on, and how do you incentivize a shop to pick that up? While if you give a 20% discount for $50, that's a little bit more incentive wise. And you obviously have the comic book shop experience. I don't. So I don't know if that's an accurate representation, but I'm curious on your side.
Really depends on the book, but I mean, if what you're saying about indie having an upper hand on the comics world really is going to come down on pricing, because they might have an upper hand, but
Right now
if
they do. Right now
book,
they do.
yeah, if the indie books, all of them, say all of them were $50 a pop, only coming out once every 6 months, then it doesn't matter because no one could afford the books. So, I mean, it's going to depend on if people actually want to utilize their leg up, because customers, I think, were really gravitating towards crowdfunding due to the lack of content that they wanted available. And that's part of the reason so much business shifted over there. But economically, I don't think it's realistic for the same demographic of people that go into the comic shops that buy weekly issues to translate all of their fandom into crowdfunding, because they're two very different business models. That same person that's going to buy their $4.99 weekly issue, or have that list of full box comics, isn't necessarily the same person that's going to spend $25 plus shipping on one book every few months. So you see, there's a
Yeah.
disconnect here with the retail world. And if the indies really want a leg up, then I really think part of the answer is getting into the shops. And that means larger quantities of sales. Yeah, you might not sell the book for $25 a pop plus shipping, but say you send them, you buy them at a reasonable price, or the retailer buys them at a reasonable price, but they move 20, 100 copies, 200 copies, 500 copies, 1,000 copies. I mean, and then say all the shops start really catching on and your book is the new hot thing, and then you're selling 10,000 copies. I mean, it's a way to really like take this to the next level.
And then if you really do want to sell those $25 or $50 pops, you make a variant. And there you go. And that's the
Yeah.
way it's done. And then if your book is selling 1,000 copies, there's and then people like it, people are going to want to buy your variant. And then so there you go. And then also to add to that, if you sold 1,000 copies of your book in one shop and it was a first issue, you think you're not going to get people to buy issue two. And so naturally, when you go crowdfunded, it's going to even further your crowdfunding. And we see that right now in crowdfunding in general, where people might reach, they might have a $3,000 goal, which is really high for a book, for a first issue. But it's not ultra high in reality if you have a good product. But then the next issue, they might do 16,000 because people really like that. And then imagine you're in a shop and then you're getting your crowdfunded money on top of all the shop money. I mean, it's a no brainer. And then also you have the other feature, which is I think the on store side of things, and that's also very interesting as well. And it's almost on demand, I think it's called, on your
Hmm.
site, where that's just I don't want to say it's an ongoing campaign, but if you have your book, and I'm assuming this is what it can be used for, but it could be used for a lot of different things in the comic world, that after you kickstart your book, if you have a bunch of printed copies, I'm assuming that you can then still sell them on that, and it's not that hard to move all
Yeah.
that, and it's all part of the same platform, and people can pick it up. And so naturally, if somebody missed your campaign, but says, "Oh man, I heard about this book. Oh man, I missed it by a day," and then it's on demand, they can pick it up that way too. And I think that's also something that Indiegogo and Kickstarter are lacking. I think it's a
Mhm.
really good idea for a lot of reasons. So how did that
Yeah.
idea come back? Because I think that's another cool idea. Because I missed Kickstarter, and I'm like, fuck, I missed it, and it's upsetting when you miss something cool.
Just availability of the books, I think, is important. You know, not everybody is going to start their campaign, or like you said, they're going to have printed copies of the book that they want to sell. So it's just a way for people to get those eyes on it and be part of it. And it's really been a community thing. I want to stress that it's been a community involvement. It's not just been like me and my husband at the,
In the
charging
evil
our way through
lair,
it all.
in the
We've
evil
asked for a
lair,
lot of
I
feedback on it. We've have a lot of people that have helped us, develop it and given us pointers. So it's been a real community thing because it is a community thing. It's the indie community thing. And I'll also say, regardless of anyone's political beliefs or views, it's a free speech platform, so everybody is welcome.
except the Easter
There's
Bunny,
no
except the Easter Bunny can't. He's got to
there's no
leave.
shunning of one person or another. Easter Bunny might have to take it up with us, but no, it's everybody. Everybody's welcome. And it's just a space for people to do their thing and enjoy comics. That's really what it is. It's no drama, drama free, no, nothing like that. Just a real nice place to go and share the love of books and share that with each other and be part of the industry.
And there's two more things I want to talk about this before we talk about the comic that's up there right now, sort of in the pre-launch. And
Okay.
the first thing I kind of want to talk about is what are the percentages on it? Because that is a big thing on how you structure it. And I think it's 3% out of the entire thing. And I know that Kickstarter is 5%, and then I believe that I think you just had to change your processing. I think it's 3% on your processing side too, so it's 6% collectively. While
Mm.
Kickstarter, my understanding is 5% Kickstarter takes, and it's 3 to 5%, and that number's up in the air. And so obviously, when you run a campaign on Kickstarter, you have to assume it's going to be the 5%, just on
Plus the
business
processing fee, just the same. It's also an additional 3% processing fee too
on on
for them.
on Indiegogo.
Yeah, on both of them, I believe is they take their, I believe it's 5% on each, and then an additional three, so it comes out to about 8, if I'm not mistaken.
So
So yeah,
Kickstarter is 8 and Indiegogo's 8.
you'd have to double check, but
Because
I'm
I don't
pretty
know
sure.
that side of the business. That's what I'm asking. Because
Well,
I know,
it's like a 5%
yeah,
platform fee, I think, on both, and then
yeah,
the payment processing 3%,
yeah,
I think, is pretty much standard across the board. That's just everybody's fee.
right. So
But
so
our
so
platform
yeah,
fee, yeah, is 3%, a bit, so it's a bit cheaper. And if it's really successful, we've said that we're happy to lower that down to 1% if we can get the ball rolling and get people involved.
right. So that was kind of my next question as well. And then this brings us to what's going on right now on the platform, because I know you have one book is up and I know another one's coming, but we're going to talk about it first. And that one is called Boobs. And so I kid you not, everybody. And so obviously, speaking about freedom of speech and speaking about total engagement and being open, and I know your husband worked on it. I think he's the writer on it, and of course it comes from a guy's perspective. Why wouldn't it? But I think you've done the art on it, right? I think so far I'm correct on this. So obviously, speaking about freedom of speech, talking about comics, this is a fun comic. It's a little bit ridiculous. It's a little bit funny. Obviously, I'm not saying it's badly drawn. I'm just saying the entire concept of it when I start explaining it. But basically, it's about a cosplayer who sort of gets in trouble because of her enormous boobs and her breasts. And
Despite her assets. Just
yeah,
yourself.
let's just say that my credit card and her breasts might not float in water, to put it bluntly and politely there. And either I'm going to be loved for that joke or hated. I'll take either one. But anyhow, we're not talking about me. We're talking about this. So this is clearly freedom of speech. So let's talk about where this idea came from, because obviously a lot of stuff's going on with this book, and we're going to dive further into it after you explain it to me and everybody else for that matter.
Okay, well, I mean, the purpose is just to laugh, so it's already working. And every time I say the name, I can't help but laugh. It's a parody comic. It's total comedy, 100% comedy. It's got a funny sidekick. It's got a silly evil supervillain. They go to conventions, obviously, so I think a lot of people are going to find the interiors really funny because you can relate. I just drew I'm doing a page a day on that book. So I just drew a page today where they're in a convention hall and they're by the booths, and it's just like all around good comic fun. If you get offended easily, it might not be the book for you. But I think you kind of got that by the title. My husband and I really love to laugh, and with our own kind of following on social media, we joke around a lot. We have a lot of fun. So it was just like a natural progression of something that I guess we're meant to do one day, is just do a ridiculous book. It's meant to be ridiculous. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We've had sales on it already, so
And let's talk a little bit about it, because obviously it's meant to be funny. It's
yeah.
meant to be a joke in many ways. It's meant to be a feel good book. It's not meant to be taken serious, and it has satire elements to it because it definitely pokes fun at cons to some degree. It brings light to cons. It obviously shows a cosplayer's perspective and what takes place at a con, and so I enjoy that aspect. And I think if people go to cons and they read this book, they're going to see scenes in the book that might be slightly exaggerated, but are relatable. And I think that's, and also it's like situational comedy in those scenes. And so, what is that like for you to really bring in the con stuff and have elements and pieces of accuracy that is relatable? Because I like books that, because that's what comedy is in general, and I think that's what this is that it takes a concept and then it exaggerates it or it presents it in a slightly different light that makes us laugh and re-examine something. And I think the best comedians do that, and I think good writers do that as well, and good artists know how to interpret good writing.
Hmm. Well, I drawing the pages, it makes me miss cons, makes me miss conventions. That's really been on my mind all day today. So it's just a lot of fun to draw because I don't know. It's hard to explain. You'll just have to read the book, but it's a great experience. I'll say that much. And while some things are definitely exaggerated, I do have to say the sidekick character Sumchai is 100% not exaggerated,
You,
which
you have
makes it
experience in this
even
field, don't
funnier.
you?
Huh?
You have experience as the sidekick, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, not me. My husband. My
It,
husband
it's based off
knew
a
in
true story. It's based off a true story.
the sidekick character is
The
based off of
entire
a real.
story is based off a true story, right?
No, no. But I think it's hilarious. I think it's a lot of fun. And I think anybody reading it, even if they get offended or not, just looking through the panels, there's just a little bit of humor in each and every page. So again, like it's just a feel good story. And where I am putting a little bit of my experiences in there. I know what it's like to be at a con behind a booth, so I know how to maybe like draw this, what they're doing in the background, but yeah, it's just total laughs. Lots of fun.
And let's talk a little bit about the perks, because obviously this entire platform, which is this is being funded on, does have perks. And I know that there is a sketch cover that's coming out, and that's kind of cool. I'm a big sketch cover guy. I like getting stuff sketched on it. I like getting cool stuff sketched on it by people that I like. I don't know if covers B and C have been released yet or have been determined yet, but
We're just actually about to release the a variant tonight. I don't know if he's done that yet on the campaign, but we just finished coloring over David Fox pencils last night, our variant. So, and then I mean more and more to come because we hit our stretch goal. We're releasing this variant, and there's
Yeah,
also
let's.
a retailer that
Yeah,
purchased quite a bit, so he'll be getting
that
variants from him too.
that's one of the things that I want to talk about too, because I think you're right about like 13,000 plus at this point. So one of the things is that obviously retailers can massively contribute to it and pick it up, and that counts to the Kickstarter or the funding, or I don't know what the word is, the crowdfunding. I guess is the word here, which is something that you have to do. You got to find a good word to use for that. Gotta like trademark it and put it in the dictionary for you. Um, but what is that like to know so quickly you reached such a massive goal? Because you're at 13,000 plus, and also I want to make this clear. I don't think that you need to be a retailer if you just want, let's say you just want cover A for yourself, and you really like this project and you're hearing it for the first time. I want to make that clear, and correct me if I'm wrong. You can just get your cover A. You don't need to like go and spend $5,000 to get this book and order like 100 of them. Obviously you can just pick up a single issue.
Yeah, yeah, you can. There's a cover A, and then there's the sketch cover variant, I believe. And then the retailer perks. And the retailer package was custom. We had a request. Sorry, I get all these stupid notifications on my phone. I don't know how to turn them off. But I think that proves my point about the retailers, that there really is interest in the world, in the retail world for indies. And I knew that as part of the reason why we built the platform. And as comic shop owners ourselves in the past, I mean, we know what we want too. We know what would be good. And we know kind of what I think a way to help out the retailers. So I think that just all around kind of proves the platform that it can be done, and that there is definite value in that. And for other people who want to try, it's something everyone's kind of, I think, got to transition into, that mentality, the retail mentality. But because I'm so familiar with it, it wasn't really a shock to me that there would be retailer interest in that book. So I mean, I have to say,
Right.
there's not like a bunch of tchotchkes is the word, keychains, t-shirts, things like that. Our stretch goals were to be announced, which is that new variant. But it's the campaign itself is pretty plain. And I mean, retailers, I think, almost kind of like that, because I think they get a little bit overwhelmed when they see a bunch of stuff on the page. I might not speak for everyone, but for some of them.
And so just to reiterate, because I think this is a really good point too, you don't really control what somebody and how they run their Kickstarter. So if somebody wants to have, my friend has a guitar pick as, part of one of his packages because it's a musical comic and it's included as one of those things. So people can still have those things and handle all of that and do it themselves. And you're not basically saying everybody has to copy the way you do your page, in which people could have those cool rewards and they could introduce variants, or they could have like a bookmark or like a metal card, for instance, or they could have metal books. And so that's completely up and open and free. And whatever stretch goals you set on your campaign is up to you as the campaign holder, and not Mindy and Mike as the platform owner.
Right. Yeah, it's you completely custom build your own campaigns. There's no control over there on us telling you what to do or not. We can make suggestions. We have built out a good like FAQ page and how it works page for some expectations. But I mean, as far as you, it's up to you what you want to do. There's the only thing different here is that there's like a retailer checkbox, and
Yep.
if you want the retailers to see that, and only the retailers, to keep that discount private, because we believe that was kind of a private transaction, what discount you set. We thought that would be fair. Then you hit the checkbox button. If not, if it's for everybody, you leave that checkbox undone.
Right.
And I'm sorry, can you hear a bunch of music in the background? My kids started
I
playing
can't,
stuff.
can't. So you're good. You're good. It's all good. And then furthermore, let's get back to boobs, because the other thing that I like about this is that you reach your goal really quickly. But I think there's like 40 plus days left. So I encourage people to obviously pledge early. And the more you pledge, and I don't know if you're going to be adding a new stretch goal depending on how much you make, or if you get other retailers in there or things like that. But obviously, pledge early. But you got a little bit of time too, per se. So
Hmm.
this isn't a 15-day Kickstarter. This is a 45 or 60-day Kickstarter, and obviously you got 40 days or so left, and maybe even more than that now that I think about it. So
We're gonna go on demand with it after the fact. I believe I need to reiterate that with Mike. But the book will be done. I in the at the end of October, beginning of November. It will be like ready to go. So Mike built out that campaign. I'm not sure what the end date was that he put, but I know that we're having a launch party at around that time. We're gonna have tons of people there. There may even be dancers. It's going to be a really fun time. We'll play music, we'll do live stream. So that's the date that we've set for all that to happen. A signing, we'll do a signing.
that's great. That's great. And to even talk further about this, because one of the things that's also cool about this, and if you actually truly believe and you like this platform, all the money that's being raised, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, from this book is going into improving indie crowdfund. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's really cool. Again, this book doesn't take itself seriously. It's meant to be a joke. It's meant to be a humorous book. I don't know if it's going to be an ongoing series. It'd be fun if it was, or every once a year it's like a one shot type deal. That'd be cool too. But I'm not telling you any ideas here, because then I have to
We've got
start charging
the
you.
issue planned.
But what is, because that's kind of cool that you are using this as the example for your crowdfunding site for the first one, and then on top of that, all the money and a good chunk of money is out there. And so if you want to test and see how all this goes, and you're interested in being on this platform, this is kind of a cool way to be involved and help provide a cushion. And that money's obviously going to be used for improvements and building it out further and further and further. And
Mhm.
to add to that, I'm sure that somewhere on this site there's a suggestion box for how to even improve it even further, because I don't mean to criticize, but I have a feeling this thing is going to go through several improvements just to make it better. Because just like everything else, we are in a time that's moving so fast that legitly 6 months from now, something else and some new technology is going to make this thing better, and it's going to make everything across the board better. And it's coming down the pike. So that's another thing to keep in mind as well when you support this book, that all that money will be used to make this thing better, or work out a kink, or make it faster, or some other improvement that will make your experience as a crowdfunder and getting your book out there a better experience.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, and we have a feedback bug report, like feature request thing on the menu. So you guys can submit feedback, suggestions, changes, anything you see. We're in the pre-launch phase. We do have active campaigns on there, but we'll probably do the grand launch when we're also doing the launch party for boobs. About at that time. And I mean, it's just how the digital world works. I mean, you remember MySpace. The digital world moves fast, and there's always room to get better. So I mean, I think we've got a really solid foundation right now. I have already heard of features that people suggest that I thought, wow, that's a really cool idea. More like connectivity between the retailers and creators, and I think it's just in general something people are really excited about. So we're definitely aiming to make it the most, catered experience to be the most efficient that we can. But that takes development, and that takes, more funding all the time. So that's part of the reason we came out with boobs, is to improve the product for sure.
And then
Again,
with
it's that whole community thing, like the retailers, the creators, the fans, everybody's involved, so.
And now we're gonna table boobs for a while. and that sounded not how I intended it for it to sound, but I've been
These
practicing that
years
one for
make
a
me
while.
happier.
I've been
That's
practicing
what it's
that.
meant to do.
I've been practicing it for a while. What can I say on that one? But I definitely want to shift focus and talk about COVID-19 and all of that. And I think you're having a better year than some other people, to be honest. Um,
No, I wouldn't say that. We had quite a lot of bad luck the first to mid part of this year. I mean, and it's been like that for a lot of people. I'm a truck driver, and trucking got destroyed,
yeah,
absolutely wrecked. I mean, you could make more money as a door dasher than driving a semi truck for quite a while there. All the jobs went away. So it's been good in comic land. I've had success with Vampirella.
for some people,
Some people. I mean, I can't imagine what everybody's going through right now. It's a really tough year.
I'm in that boat, so I completely understand how tough it is because life is complicated. For those who don't know, and me and Mindy were speaking before, I buy and sell a lot of comics, and it's not my main job, but I have a lot of inventory right now, and because I can only flip at a certain price, and a lot of other people are maybe $5 cheaper than me, and they're not moving much merchandise either. And there's a lot of more people who have a lot more inventory than I have, and they're getting hit hard, and I know a bunch of them. And I am nowhere near the size of the big guys. So obviously, in the economic side of con stuff and all that stuff, it's messed up. And then obviously, cons are just dead. Emerald City, which is a big one, got canceled. WonderCon got canceled. Anime Boston ended. Awesome Con ended in DC. Um, Stuff in obviously Emerald City in Seattle is a big deal. And I'm naming certain cities because 25 to 35% of the U.S. population is in these cities. San Diego Comic Con is another one. New York Comic Con's canceled. So obviously a lot of stuff's getting canceled. Shops, a bunch of shops have shut down, but a bunch of shops have actually been saved inadvertently because they weren't getting bombarded with new orders and all that stuff. And so it's been a very interesting time for them. And so I'm just curious how you've been affected in the comic realm and coming back into social media after a break and really just getting your name out there because I think that Dynamite thing really helped and gave you a much needed social boost during COVID, and
Yeah.
not everybody's had that. And obviously, I speak to a lot of indie people, and I'm experiencing a much greater level of competition. And I like it to some degree in the interview space, but I also don't like it because 6 months ago there was probably about 50% less competition in this space, and I see it now. And I like it because I got to step up my game here, but at the same time, it is becoming saturated really, really quickly.
Yeah, it's I mean,
Because
in
those
comics,
Facebook groups have really blown up during the middle of it.
yeah,
And that's an
yeah,
indicator. That's an indicator.
they have. The indie community has really started talking, to each other. And I think that the books, people have been really inspired the past 2 years or so to do crowdfunding, indie guys. But now that everybody's been at home with nothing to do, now all these projects have just exploded. And there's been a lot more connectivity between creators and fans and Facebook groups and online shows, interviews. I mean, it's really, the whole industry has just really come together, I think, and talked a lot more than they ever have. For me, the Dynamite cover was great, great news for me. And it turned out to be very successful, and I got a bunch of new fans.
And the
Um,
publicity on it is worth probably much more than anything else related to it.
yeah.
Just to call a spade, that publicity is going to be worth so much money. And you couldn't buy that publicity. Just to call a spade a spade.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like a checkbox, of like I think every comic artist or creator's dream is to kind of like, do the climbing the ladder thing. And I remember expressing frustration. I might have even expressed frustration in our old interview
You might
that
have.
it
You
was
might have. It's been a while.
did I? Yeah, that I was confused of how to climb the comics ladder because in every other job that exists in the world, you do good, you get a promotion. You do good, you get a promotion. But comics just weren't working for that like that for me. You know, it was like I was doing the best I could, but the jobs don't always fall for performance based. That was a big complaint of mine.
Yeah.
The people that try the hardest, do the most work, don't always benefit, and that's just a weird thing with comics. It's very weird.
Entertainment too, just in general, entertainment is very
Yeah,
much like
entertainment,
that.
arts. Yeah,
It's the one sector where it's I hate to say it, and I'm going to say it in a way that there's two ways to say it. It's who you know and not what you know, or it's who you're sleeping with. And there are certain people, and I'm not going to name who, but have slept with certain people at cons and get certain gigs and
oh, in
and
comics. Oh, geez,
at
I don't even.
comic cons and stuff like that.
Mm.
I don't know about in comics, but at cons there are certain people who have certain jobs because they've slept around, and it's well known in the field. And I'm not going to say who. And I know a good
Did
lawyer.
I not ask?
I know a good lawyer, so if they see this, I say game on because I will go into debt to defend myself. I'm just letting everybody know. I'm letting everybody know that fair game. But continue, please.
That's part of the world didn't really, I didn't really see any of that because I never was in the comic world single. I've always been married. So I'm really disconnected to all of that. But definitely like friends, giving friends jobs. And I've had conversation with some industry veterans who've also been frustrated with this. Social media has played into it where maybe somebody gets a job because they have a larger social media following, but maybe not because they have the talent. These are all frustrations that have been circulating, for a few years in the industry. And part of the reason I got so fed up with it at one point. But now I think everybody's eyes are on the internet, on crowdfunding, also on indie books in general, like the retailers, the people who go there that aren't on Facebook on crowdfunding, they are looking at indies and other content, very heavily. So it's shifted quite a lot. People now have an opportunity to provide that content, and it's not so pushed down by people that might hire based on, like you said, who you know. And that's really what I was running into in the past was loss of opportunity due to my personal beliefs. I mean, really, that's kind of what most of it all came down to. And that was really frustrating because I didn't see the world why they would have anything to do with each other. But now, again, it's like, we said earlier in the interview, the difference between then and now is I think that there's less of that. People have more opportunity to just say, you know what, whatever, I'm working for myself now and I'm going to make my own book and I'm getting it out there. And now they have a chance to get it in front of a bunch of retailers' eyes. And it's just the whole industry is going on this new direction. COVID has had a lot to do with that, a lot to do with that.
And let's talk even more about that because I'm curious because you've done a few cons. I've done a lot of conventions. I've been to probably about 30 in the last 9 years, and I've presented at a bunch, and I present alone. So socially distanced made it cool, guys. I made it cool. Um, but anyhow, I'm sorry. I love inflating my ego. What can I say? But I go to a con and I see tables are close together, or they were. I go to cons, see vendors are close together. I see celebrities to some degree are close together. And so, and you've seen it too, and you've obviously bought tables, and you're pretty close to other people too. And that's not an issue when nobody's sick. But given COVID's happening, and I've had people on who have been to cons since down in Florida, and what they were saying is that now tables are more spaced out, and that obviously cons have gone into a bigger venue to have more space. And so I'm curious because I'm assuming you want to go back to cons and push out boobs and even make introduction to your crowdfunding platform and indie crowdfund. And you kind of sometimes need to be in person. People need to see a face associated with it. So what do you think cons look like? What do you think they need to do to go back to that? Or go back to something like that because we're never going back to what it was before COVID ever again. It's just not going to ever happen, or at least it's not going to happen for a few years. And I think it's the right call. I think cons need to be a little bit smaller for safety reasons because I think cons were already dangerous. I think cons were already a fire hazard, and we all know con crud. Those two things already existed. We just, as fans, pushed that out of our head. And now with COVID, I think we're pushing it into our heads.
Hmm. I think COVID has been very unfortunate. Um, and I can't imagine what some people have gone through with the loss, any loss this year. I mean, I saw pictures of reefer trailers outside of New York months ago, putting the bodies. That's where they're putting the bodies. And I've driven reefer trailers. I could just imagine the horror. That being said, though, I'm not sure how to convey my stance on COVID in this way because
With cons in general.
with cons in general and anywhere, I think that okay, I'll be there in a second. I think that a lot is going to change around election time, or may not change. I don't know. So I'm kind of staying away from projecting on that because I don't know what's going to happen. I could easily see the masks falling off after November 3rd or them staying. I don't know. I think part of it has been politicized. And so I don't want to offend anybody by saying to what extent or not. I think any loss is tragic. There's no excusing that. But I also don't know. I mean, there's a lot that I think behind that. And I
Without
don't
even going political, and I know you got to go in like 5 minutes or so, but and I want to give you a chance to promote yourself as well. But obviously, I really think that from my personal belief, well, whether you believe COVID or not or all that stuff, obviously I wear a mask because it's not infringing upon my civil liberties. At least not yet. It isn't. And it hasn't crossed that line. And I respect the people around me. And if I'm going into somebody's store, I respect them. But obviously, I'm a strong believer with the con scene that I think COVID's a great thing where I think it's forcing people to become more spaced out. And I think we do need more space at conventions. And I think that there are concerns, and I think it's a good thing to have more space between people's booths. I think it's good to have a little more air and breathing there, and I hope that maintains even after all of this is solved, and I hope we have vaccination. But I hope cons really do take that into consideration because I think it's going to be a positive thing. The end results going 3 years, 4 years out, where I think that I think it's nice if we have like 3 feet between a booth and they're not all stacked on each other because and maybe less artists, maybe there's one less row of artists. Because in this way, everybody has more room to function, and maybe cons are capped off a little bit so people can breathe. So that's how I feel.
sorry.
And then,
The only
yeah,
thing, my concern with this COVID thing, and it's with restaurants too. Um, I get concerned economically of the economics behind the people and the shows. It's like, have you ever watched that show Bar Rescue? Um,
I understand completely. So let me take a stab at it if I may. What one of the biggest concerns, and I've spoken about this before, is that if you have a con that was catering to 40,000 people, that means that you have 40,000 foot traffic. That doesn't mean the indie person is going to get 40,000 people buying their book. If they did, they are a phenomenon. And please talk to me, be on my show because there's so much to talk about and so little. You are the world's greatest salesperson if you can do that and pull that off. But you're going to get a percentage of that. And so naturally, the larger the number, the greater percentage. Or if your percentage is the same, but obviously 1% of 40,000 is bigger than 1% of 20,000. And so, obviously, if you cap out at something, that limits what everybody can make across the board. And
yeah,
not just the indies, but in particular for the indies, because you as an indie creator, when you're at a con, you have to sell your book. Versus DC, Marvel, Image, those books sell themselves with those characters. And those big time creators in many ways sell themselves. When Scott Snyder, nothing against Scott follows me on Twitter, which I still love. I think he still follows me, and Scott's a great guy. But Scott Snyder doesn't need to sell Scott Snyder. Mindy Wheeler needs to sell Mindy Wheeler. You need to sell your book. And so I think that's the concern, right?
Yeah, it is. It spreads the money out thinner by taking away the tables, just like restaurants. It's just a question I have in my head. I'm just observing the longevity of it. I hope everyone can pull through, but I just understand. I'm looking at it through the lens of,
Well,
um,
take a
you know,
controversial position. I know.
anybody can,
I know.
yeah,
This is
anybody
controversial
can,
by definition, and I'm taking the position, and I'm not trying to take food out of anybody's mouth. But at the same time, there is a major question of, okay, how many artists can we have, and how many people can we have, versus the safety, as well as also creating a better con environment for everybody. And it's very tricky. And I'm not saying I don't make this decision. I mean, I've had this conversation with about 20 different people, and everybody is having this, and this is what they're doing down in Florida. And one of the answers down in Florida was having a larger con center, having the same
yeah,
amount of people, but just having a bigger space. And so there's smaller cons going into larger spaces. And maybe the con makes $10,000 less, but they're still making their share. But it's also a better experience. And so I get the complete argument. And I don't say this lightly. I mean, I've thought about this in a variety of ways. And so, because that's what as a fan, and I view it from that position, is that clearly, I think more room is better because
that's a
crowds
smart
cons get
idea. Yeah, that's a
crazy.
smart idea. If I was running a show, that's probably what I would do. I'd probably rent a larger venue, and now it's going to cost the showrunner some more money. I mean, they're going to lose some profits probably. Um, they could I might you might see people raising the ticket prices to cover that. I don't know. It really depends on what type of show they have and what they're paying for. But as long as they're able to afford to do it, and seems like a decent solution. That seems
It's
like a
very
decent.
tricky. It's tricky and it's very delicate and it requires finesse is the word.
Yeah, yeah, I feel for the restaurants that have to lose their tables because their tables are how they make their money, and that I j- you know I'm a small business owner. I have been for years, and I used to consult do marketing for them. I've known so many of them, from restaurant owners to doctors to psychics to people that run their own newspapers, the people creating their own vitamins. I mean, I've chiropractors, sports guys. I've known so many small business owners and worked with them. I just that scares me. In addition to what's already scary about people losing their life, of course. Are the small business owners and how badly they're being hurt by all this. It's a difficult topic and it's tricky for everyone. Like I said, I could see it might go the way that masks come off after the election, or they might stay. I really don't know what's going to happen. So that's a better question to ask long term, I guess, after the election. And it's not just me saying that.
Fair
I see
enough.
the dang articles on my phone come through. Oh, the election, and they're directly correlating it to masks. So we'll see what happens about all that. But if that's a good solution for a cons is to expand. For a restaurant, they can't do
Much
that.
trickier.
But
Much trickier.
there's also like taking advantage of drive-through or DoorDash or whatever to help those sales. It's been just an extremely difficult year for so many people. So for anybody that's getting by right now, that's good for them. They're lucky. A lot of people are hurting.
And now, I want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself because I think you're needed elsewhere. Obviously, you got a lot going on. Indie crowdfund is a big one. So where can people find that? Facebook page. I know you have one. I don't know if you have Twitter. I know
Mhm.
that. Don't know if you have another website. I don't know if you have an Instagram. And I don't know if you have a TikTok because that's kind of the new jam, especially with what's going on there. And dancing is fun, I guess.
I don't have a TikTok. I know all about TikTok, but I don't have one. But I have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Mindy Wheeler Art. Twitter as well /Mindy Wheeler Art. Same with Facebook, same with Instagram. Also, I have a Deviant Art. And that's just, I think, Mindy Wheeler. Drop the art. But I've been on DeviantArt for like 15 years. And yeah,
You're
I
an
mean,
OG. You're an OG.
commitment. Yeah, but I'm also I have another book coming out called Karma. That's the book I've been working on for many, many years. It's much more of a Halloween themed book. It's the perfect time to release it, so it'll be released right around Halloween. I was thinking of launching the campaign this week, but I'm gonna hold off. I think a little bit. We'll see. I'm gonna put all my pages together and do my little project management projections and figure out exactly the date. But I definitely want it like out by Halloween because it's the perfect time. There's witches, there's spooky things. It's perfect. So there's that to look forward to as well. And then there's boobs. And then there's indie crowdfund. So I'm a busy person. And I'm drawing a page a day right now. So page a day. I was trying to push for 2, but it's been so busy that it's hard to get into. It's really hard. I can get in like 1.5, but that's part of the challenge. When I talked to you 4 years ago, I was having trouble doing a page a day. I could do like a quarter of a page a day. So it just takes that time and practice. Now I'm at a page. Now I'm going to try to push further. So, and I do streams. I do streams on YouTube of drawing every Saturday night, and my little talk show with my husband on Mondays. So I'm around.
Well, I think we're going to leave it at that, but I am going to say this because I've been saying it to every single person after my interviews, and to end this stuff is, please, if you have extra money, throw money at crowdfunding. Throw money. Boobs obviously looks funny. It seems funny. The name itself, I mean, if the name itself makes you laugh, then you should definitely consider picking it up. I don't think it's that expensive to get the book. I think it's pretty reasonable and all that stuff. And also, you're supporting the platform. You're getting into the ecosystem, which is also another big thing. And you don't know who's going to come onto that platform. And if you're an indie crowdfunding person and you're looking for the next thing, and maybe you're not thrilled with Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or maybe you like that retailer connection and you think you can get into retailer stuff and all that stuff, or you want certain perks, because there's a variety of other perks that we didn't get to talk about that I think is directly tied to your platform with CBCS and grading and other
Oh, yeah.
stuff. And then
All the dealer level discount with CBCS. They're our grading partner, and there's a bunch of really awesome partners there that
and
we've got in
so
fulfillment.
so we could be here all day talking about that, but obviously people can go read that list, and I'm sure that there's a lot more information out there about that as well. And I'm sure, and also I believe there's a Facebook group that's really meant for supporting and supporting each other as well, and all that's really linked on Indie Crowdfund. So please, if you are just a comic reader, please go support it, create an account, go throw money at that. It's not that expensive. And then secondly, if you're an indie buyer, you should do that. If you're an indie crowd creator, wow, I can't speak creator, and you're sick of the other big two, or you're just looking to try something else, this is a place to do it. And they can sign up now, correct?
Oh yeah, they can sign up. The site's live. We're in the pre-launch, so it's just like getting everybody together. It's real community involved, but I mean, it's functional. Everything's there. You can create campaigns and go check it out. Should have no problems.
And then if you're not in any of those boats, or you're taking care of your family and covering yourself and making sure you're okay, because we don't know the future and there's a bunch of other stuff that could happen, or you're just getting back up on your feet. I understand that. I think Mindy understands that. I think most comic creators understand that. But if you have electricity and internet and you're watching this and you like what you hear, please go support on social media, because that is just as important, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, DeviantArt, Facebook page, Facebook group, any other social media that anybody's on. Please go support them, because that is just as important. If they put something up that's awesome, say, hey, really cool piece. Oh man, how'd you do that? Because that stuff, makes people feel really good. It makes people feel like their artwork and what they're doing is being reconfirmed. It also lets people know what you like and what you don't like, and what they want, what you want more of. And that is so important, and it goes such a long way. And I always say this as well, that if you're watching this and you don't have internet or electricity, Those are your only excuses, and please contact me because I want to know how you're watching me because clearly there's a new piece of technology out there and I want in. And I want in. And I will find a way how to scratch money, make an investment, get us both rich if you're not watching this without internet or electricity and there's a business opportunity knocking on your doorstep and I want to be rich and I want to make you rich if you have that piece of technology and we will become rich together. And I could just say this, it's a lot better to be rich than poor, and the only question that's going to be asked at the Porsche dealer is black or yellow. So please, that's the only excuse for not supporting.
Well said.
Well, I think that's a wrap right there, and I think we're gonna end. And obviously, I'd like to say thank you to my sponsor as well as to you for doing this and occupying your time for a considerable amount of time and definitely helping to promote this and being on this show. And I got 4 more everybody this week to do tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and then Sunday. So there's a lot of content coming out there. And as always, I appreciate Mindy for being on again, as well as everybody for watching this.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody for watching.